If you are a politics geek, particularly a fan of foreign policy through the years, you certainly know the name KT McFarland, Senior Advisor, Foundation for Defense of Democracies, an expert on Iran, former Pentagon official, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for President Reagan, former National Security Council staff member under President Nixon and Ford. And we welcome KT McFarland to the show. How are you? Good morning.
Well, I'm just delighted to be referred to as a geek and a friend of geeks.
Well, you're not the geek. We're the geeks.
No, actually, I went to MIT, so I'm a total geek.
Oh, okay.
No, that's fine.
Well, fair enough. You're among friends then. Hey, if I may start with kind of a tangent, I read a piece in the Wall Street Journal, the headline of which yesterday, I believe, was, "We've been talking to Iran for 30 years,"
yeah.
Which documents the Reagan administration's contacts, and then Clinton and Carter, obviously, and the Bush administration trying to open channels, et cetera. So it's not like we've never chatted with them.
How come I keep hearing in the news it's the first time we've had talks with Iran in 30 years?
Well, it was a convenient narrative. You know, if only we would talk to Iran, if only President Obama would have negotiations with Iran, then Iran would give up its nuclear program. And clearly that's sort of specious, because we're now sitting down with Iran, and they are showing no intention of giving up their nuclear program. In fact, just the opposite. Last week they were caught red-handed with a second hidden nuclear enrichment site that can only be used for nuclear weapons, and they've in the last week tested long-range, medium-range, and short-range missiles capable of carrying nuclear weapons. So, you know, their intention is clear. They're going for the bomb.
What's your guess as to who's making these decisions? Is it Ahmadinejad? Is it the mullahs? Is it the Revolutionary Guard, or whatever they're called?
Well, the Revolutionary Guard seems to be in increasingly strong position in Iran. But make no mistake, there's no sort of difference in who wants to do what. There's a uniform opinion in Iran that they want to go for nuclear weapons. Now, the question is, you know, what's their public relations ploy in it? Do they sort of rattle the sable all the time, or are they a little more quiet? I think they're trying to play out the clock with these negotiations. What they're hoping is that they string us along, and then in 18 months or 2 years they say, oops, bingo, we have nuclear weapons, new game.
You know, I read a fairly compelling argument the other day, because it's difficult to know what the right path is, obviously, that what we need is massive engagement with these people on the scale of Nixon going to China,
right.
Open up the trade, open up the diplomacy, remove all the sanctions, infect them with, if not democracy, infect them with interchange with the outside world. And sway them that way, because there's no way we're going to stop them from getting nukes. How do you answer that?
Well, you know, I understand the odds of the stakes I don't like. You know, what if we're wrong? I mean, what if Iran gets nuclear weapons? It ignites a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, as Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Turkey all want nuclear weapons of their own. And the more nuclear weapons powers you have in the single most unstable, dangerous part of the world, the more likelihood that one of them is going to go off. I think that a better plan would be continue to engage, leave the hand of friendship out there, but at the same time, strangle them with crippling economic sanctions. You know, in other words, we could shut off their gasoline supply. Although they export oil, they don't refine it, so they have to import refined oil, which is gasoline. The other thing we could do is strangle them in the banking system. All these checks for Iranian oil, or that Iran pays for gasoline, they all get denominated in dollars.
Can we do that without China helping?
Yeah, that part we could do, because if it's denominated in dollars, like let's say you write a check to your local grocery store, it's in dollars, right? Well, a bank has to clear it. An American bank has to clear it. If we tell all the American banks, you don't clear anything going in and out of Iran, that really does bring them, their banking system anyway, to a pretty screeching halt very quickly. And the thought of that is if you cripple their economy, you then hopefully get them back to the negotiating table ready to do business, or you encourage their domestic population, which is pretty unsatisfied with the elections, as you pointed out, and what's going on at home, that maybe they take things into their own hands.
We're listening to, that's an interesting possibility. We're talking to KT McFarland, longtime presidential advisor, expert on Iran, about the situation with Iran. I was just going to say, if I'm a mullah, and I've applied for the job, I'm saying, you know what? We're looking at 6-7 years of austerity, of unrest, of
right.
tough financial times. Then we're a nuclear power. Then we fulfill our God-given role as a regional uber power. Fine and dandy. And my guess is, based on a knowledge base that's 1/100th of yours on a good day, my guess is that's what they're saying.
Oh, I think they've really committed themselves to going, because they know that once they have nuclear weapons, they're in a very different position in the world. You know, they're the big guy in the Middle East. They can threaten Israel. They can blackmail anybody they want. And at the same time, they're an oil-rich country. So the question I have is, what can we do to prevent them from getting there? Now, we should have put economic sanctions a year ago, 6 months ago. We didn't. Now, if economic sanctions can't stop them, you know, we know diplomatic negotiations aren't going to work. Maybe economic sanctions plus diplomatic negotiations work. But at a certain point in the very near future, we've got to conclude nothing's going to stop them, because at that point, Israel, which has, is threatened, its very existence is threatened by Iran having nuclear weapons. Israel's going to take matters into their own hands, and they're going to bomb Iran.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. While we're discussing all this and debating,
we're being very quiet,
there's a decent chance that Israel's just going to go ahead and take care of it. What do you say to the bomb them back to the Stone Age crowd? You know, there's always a certain percentage of people out there that just want to solve everything by
bombing them back to the Stone Age.
Making it sandier and hotter.
Going back to tents and camels. That's, I guess, one possibility. I don't think it's a very realistic possibility. What is more likely is that Israel will attack very judiciously Iran's nuclear sites. It'll be difficult. It won't stop Iran, but it'll set Iran back 2 or 3 years. But what then happens is Iran retaliates, and Iran will let loose Hezbollah and Hamas on Israel. They'll all-out holy war against Israel. And I think Iran will then move to cut off the Strait of Hormuz, through which 40% of the world's oil supply goes.
Yipes!
Right.
Yeah, and then, you think $5 a gallon gas was bad? Add a zero.
Oh-wee. All right.
I don't think that lasts for long, but it's one.
Wouldn't have to last very long.
Hide by a horse. KT McFarland's on the line. So, I've been trying to avoid being like an anxious young lover and rushing to the bottom line here.
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
What do we do, KT? What do we do?
I think what we do now is crippling economic sanctions now, today. Don't wait to see how these negotiations go, because, again, Iran is playing out the clock. They want to be able to string this along for 9, 18, 24 months, and then they're where they want to be. So crippling economic sanctions right now, that we tell them, if you stop your nuclear program, we'll release these we'll stop, but none of this, we'll wait and hope for the best. And then the second thing we have to do is, if nothing else works, then I think we should at least not stop Israel from taking military action. Because here's the problem. A nuclear Iran changes the world. That means that it's like because it's a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, it's like throwing a lighted match into a room full of gasoline. And then you get to the point where there's just a matter of time before a nuclear weapon gets used, either accidentally or intentionally.
Does everybody really believe that? Barack Obama says that's not an option, allowing Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Gates said the other day it would be a disaster for the world. Gordo Brown said we can't let it happen. Sarkozy says do they all mean it?
You don't know. We'll find out soon enough, because I think that these negotiations are going to fail. And I don't know that Russia and China go along with crippling economic sanctions, and those sanctions will be less crippling without their help, and they really won't have any teeth. So then we're back to the same place we started, which is a nuclear Iran. I don't know if everybody has the will to take military action, because military action is not going to be clean or easy. It's going to have terrible consequences.
And isn't the big calculation this? Is Iran at a place now where the people on the street, if Israel attacks Iran, we, France, and England together attack Iran, would the people on the street react with, "You stupid government, you see what you've brought upon us,"
right,
and they rally in the streets and they hate the government? Or would they rally around the flag, and you get another generation of people who hate the West and are pro anything the Iranian government does?
That's the big question mark.
And nobody knows the answer to that.
Nobody knows the answer to that. And were we to take, not we, but let's say Israel, I think that's the more likely scenario. Israel takes military action. Could we, at the same time, we, the West, sort of bomb them with PR moves, go on Facebook, go on Twitter, have Obama give another address, a dozen addresses to the Iranian people saying, we want to be your friends, but we can't let you have nuclear weapons, and we encourage you to overthrow your leaders. I think any military action that might happen should be accompanied by a real push for political action, that they take their future into their own hands.
Well,
these are really pretty scary times.
Well, it sounds like a coin flip between the unspeakable and the unthinkable. I mean,
right.
What am I rooting for? I guess, and Lord knows, people who know me know I don't tend to be naive about this sort of thing, but it seems like the one option that's not unthinkable is to just, engage them so massively, so openly, unleash such propaganda at the Iranian people, back it up with the prosperity brought by trade with the West.
Right.
That, the appeal of the mullahs starts to be even smaller than it is right now.